Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to welcome you to this, which is the sixth Digital Insights webinar. And we'll be kicking off in a short while. I'll give it about 1 more minute so that we can get everyone joined up. So we'll be with you in a minute or so. Sorry, Carl, can I just check with you? I'm having trouble sharing my screen. Can you see my screen at all?
Hi, Neville. Yes, I can see your screen. We're ready for you to pop into present mode.
Okay, thank you. So let's get going here. Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining to this morning's call. This is Digital Insights number 6 of a series where we are still in the process of answering the question of can South Africa attain the status of being considered a leader in the delivery of IT outsourcing and digital services. In this 6th series, we are going to be focusing on AI. We've got 2 very exciting panelists that will be joining us today. And I must say that I'm quite excited. This is the first time that we've extended the webinar to 90 minutes so that we can get into more detail and more information on the subject. I just want to say that the recording for this particular webinar will be made available to members only. So that is a value-added component that we do offer our members. And but for the rest of you, thank you for joining. And then let's get into today's program. So I just want to then start off by welcoming everybody to this webinar. Welcome to the panel members who I'll be introducing to you shortly. And then I'm going to start off with just a brief overview of PEPESA and the areas that we will be focusing on during 2021. We'll do the introduction to the panel members, followed by a panel discussion, which will be quite an extended panel discussion. We'll be going into the basics and a high-level overview of what artificial intelligence is. And then we've got 4 use cases that we're going to get into. And I think that's going to be quite an exciting or quite an interesting discussion. We're going to keep it informal. So please, if you have any questions out there that you need to ask, please pop them into the question and answer session. And Coral, who's supporting us on this call today, will then assist me in getting those questions through to us, and then we'll be happy to answer those questions. And then right at the end, I'll just be closing out with a PEPESA member value. What is the value of becoming a PEPESA membership? And then that should take us through to the end of the webinar at about 11:30. So question is, who is BEPESA? I think many of you already know that, but for those of you that don't, BEPESA is the industry body for the global business services sector. We represent all the global services and that industry in South Africa. Our objective is to attract global business services to South Africa. That is on the one side. On the other side, we have a very strong and very focused effort in addressing unemployment, creating new jobs, and in the process also looking at the upskilling of our member base and those that operate within this industry. So we've got a number of upskilling and training programs that we support, and we work together with the industry in order to make sure that the supply side and the demand side are synchronized. And so the question that we are focused on is where BEPESA was traditionally focused on BPO, business process outsourcing, and shared services. We are actively driving into looking at IT outsourcing. We believe that there's a great opportunity in the country for IT outsourcing to be delivered from this country. We've got very large number of skills and a large capability in order to deliver those services. And then we're also going to be developing and very keen to develop the digital services, which is a very broad subject and covers anything from design through to software development and application development and support, software testing, etc. And then obviously also on the services side, managed services of digital support and digital services. So area that we will be growing into and that we will be developing over the coming years. It is BEPESA's objective that by 2030, we would have added another 500,000 new jobs into the industry. So it seems like a large ask, but we're very confident that we will be able to achieve that. So getting to today's subject, the question, can South Africa attain the status of being a leader in the delivery of IT outsourcing and digital services? I think today, as we go into these subjects, you'll see that certainly in areas, South Africa stands out and can actually differentiate itself in the world as being competitive and being able to deliver these services at a very high level of standard. So I want to just then get started and introduce you to our panel members. We have two panelists today. We have and welcome Ati Ngubevana. She is the Group Executive Head of Department Digital Process Re-engineering for the Vodacom Technology Group. Ati has had quite an extensive career. She's been operating in a number of regions across EMEA, Latin America, Asia Pacific, and in Africa. She's been active in South Africa, Mozambique, Lesotho, Tanzania, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And she has experience in banking, mining, telecommunications. I can go on. This is quite a large bio to get through. But Ati, very welcome to the panel. Happy to have you on the call today. I just wanted to ask if you could just say hi or good morning to everybody, and then just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ati, predominantly from banking, and somehow I've transitioned my career into mining, and now I'm in the telco, which our organization is transitioning to being a technology company. And I've been tasked with the group function of implementing intelligent automation in all of the operating companies where Vodacom operates.
Thank you, Ati. And once again, welcome to the panel. Very happy to have you with us today. And then the next is Cobus van der Westhuizen. Actually, Cobus joined us on one of these webinars. I think it was the third one in the series. I just felt that it was great. It would be good to get Cobus back again so that we could go into more detail and more depth. Partly the reason why today's call is going to be 90 minutes, because it just felt like in the previous calls, as soon as we got into some of the detail, we'd run out of time. So for those of you that don't know, Cobus is the founder of Genie AI and Analytics, a company based down in the Western Cape that is focused on AI and analytics. Cobus has had an extensive career, and over the last 20 years has been involved in the business process outsourcing and analytics markets. Before starting Genie AI, Cobus held executive positions in several BPO companies, such as PRC in the USA, CCN, Aegis, where he was the country head. And then Cobus was a board member for Bepesa for 7 years and has been instrumental in attracting several UK companies to outsource to South Africa. So Cobus has extensive experience in this industry, but also having started Genie Analytics, is starting to show his ability to differentiate on the technology side as well. So welcome, Cobus. Do you want to just add and fill in the blanks? I'm sure there are lots of blanks that I didn't touch on, but good morning, Cobus.
Okay, good morning, Neville. Thanks very much. No, that's a great introduction. The only thing I can add to that, so that we can actually get going, is that we started the Genie company, the analytics and AI company, now about 8 years ago, after being involved in BPO, and the real purpose for that was to see how, if we anticipate the digital wave or the AI wave or machine learning coming our way into this industry. I think we saw early indicators of that and decided to see what one can do about it, and if one can anticipate that. And yeah, the rest is history. We've now 8 years in, actually our 9th year going into it, and it looks like things are going okay at this point in time.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, starting a business and getting it going, especially from a technology side, can be a huge challenge. Probably have lost some hair, I'm sure, but
definitely, definitely.
But I think it's still exciting. I mean, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of startup companies in my career, and back in the day. And I must say, it's not easy. And so, so kudos to you, Cobus, and your team. You're starting to make some inroads in the industry, not just here locally, but internationally as well. So, so well done. But let's get into the subject matter here. So, so moving on into the panel discussion. When I spoke to Ati and Cobus and we were doing the planning, I asked them, so, what are we going to talk about? And Ati came up with this great phrase of the AI-fueled organizations, unlocking human-centered intelligent automation. And I think this is key, because at the one end, I think we're going to get into this discussion about what is AI and where does it fit in. And I think this is quite apt, because the reference to an AI-fueled organization is quite apt, because AI pervades into all areas of the business and has the potential of enhancing and elevating everything we do in an organization. I know there's some criticism about AI, some concerns about it. So we'll get into those and we'll talk about those. But then also the human-centered discussion is definitely something that we're going to get into. And so to get the discussion going, I think, Ati, if you can maybe just get us talking on, this this idea of human-centeredness when it comes to AI. So I'm going to hand over to you, and I know you've prepared this slide for us. So, so talk to us about the slide, Ati, and then we'll discuss this. And Cobus, feel free to participate as well. Thank you. Ati, over to you.
All right, thanks, Neville. Right, so I think it's worth giving everybody on this webinar context in my journey in Vodacom, in that everything that we've been doing. So my team is about 3 years old now. It is a new department in that the function didn't exist before. So we were tasked to implement robotics process automation in South Africa. Quite a basic technology, basic inverted commas, in that RPA is a technology that's able to replicate and to be programmed to replicate rules-based, repetitive, structured type of work that is done by people. And as we started, and I had a South African function, and as we started to engage with different business units, obviously there was a whole misunderstanding in terms of the purpose of RPA, because it was associated with taking away jobs. So our first year was quite tricky in that it had a lot to do with stakeholder management and understanding and adoption of the technology. And so as we started to see the complexity that is Vodacom, we started seeing that RPA in of itself has its limitations. And so as a result, and I think the way from a structure perspective, I fall part of a team that is looking after big data, AI, and RPA, which I found looking back now, it's the best combination or the best kind of department that a person like me could be situated in that, because RPA then has its limitations. We were able to then reach out to our colleagues. I mean, my colleagues are lead data scientists, where we realized that where RPA has its limitation, where can we then see opportunities to have a convergence of these technologies to increase our level of automation in the organization? And that's where we then, now last year, 2020, in the whole COVID lockdown situation, we unlocked a lot of opportunities where there was our ability to use machine learning to work alongside people to help people be more powerful individuals as employees. And we are also helping these individuals when they are engaging with the customers. So this is where we've now seen ourselves. And obviously within the last year also, my role grew to be a group function where what I'm doing in South Africa, I do in all of the opcos. So I will then, before I go into the detail of how we've unlocked the human-centered intelligent automation, I think it's worth mentioning how a lot of organizations are generally reactive in how we set up our operational structures, right? For example, a tower would fall over for whatever reason, we tend to want to react and try and solve it. So I think in the traditional telco space, there's a lot of work done to do maintenance and proactively prevent towers from falling over. But when you look at the contact center, customer has a particular pain point, they call us, we react to their problems. Customer wants to leave, they call us, we react and we try and save them, right? Customer defaults on a payment, we call them, we react and we call them and we try and collect on their outstanding debt. That is generally why a lot of operational teams exist, to almost respond to external stimuli that are generally influenced by our customers. So what we've been able to then do in the reactive space is to try and say, what are the things that we could proactively do to prevent the customer being the external stimuli that charges our proactive nature. And this is where we then realize that as an organization, we know a lot about our customers. We know why they call us. We know what type of customers tend to default. We generally have a trend, right, on if a customer XYZ has this kind of experience, they generally leave. But I think when you look at the human mind, there's absolutely no way where we could have teams that go through the billions of customer data to say, okay, when a customer has done XYZ, we actually think they could leave. Or if a customer this has happened, they're gonna call us and complain. And that's where artificial intelligence comes in, right? Artificial intelligence is a science that has the power to, computing power, right? To replicate what the mind could do, but at an amplified level. So what that means is that using artificial intelligence and machine learning, we're able to pick up patterns that a normal human mind would not be able to do. And then through those patterns, right? So I'll give you the example of where this concept of customers potentially leaving. If a customer has a trend of, in the past, we've seen when customers start using less of our data, right? Or less of our airtime. Or if a customer maybe, this is like random examples that would be applicable to any industry. If they start closing off their accounts, you know, and maybe if they start having an increase in customer complaints, right? And maybe having technical problems with our service, that generally are good traits that indicate that this customer is unhappy, right? And in the past, customers have left us because of those reasons. So why do we not play in the space of using machine learning and AI to pick up those patterns? And then that way we're able to see this is potentially a customer that has a high propensity to leave us, right? Then what we can then do is send that kind of information to our sales team, or maybe if you've got a sales team, to tell them, hey, you know what? We believe because of this customer experience, 1,000 of these customers are exhibiting these kind of traits, you know? Using this information that we've given you, try and call the customer from a retentions perspective, right? And try check up on them, because I think also if you think about it as a customer, it's quite a feel-good factor that my organization understands me and my experience and is willing to engage me in an informed manner. So we don't just randomly do cold calls for the sake of calling them. So this means that we are able to then proactively now manage our customers in such a way that if they do have an issue, but they were not maybe going to talk to us about, they could raise it in those engagements. But whoever is the agent or the account manager that's actually calling the customer, they get to engage with the customer through a platform, so that we've built platforms where, I mean, machine learning in of itself, you guys will see later on how the data really to a normal human is like a 1 and a 0, 0 and a 1. It's not really understandable. We're able to convert those trends from a customer perspective into a naturally understandable language, and we push it to the human so that when the human is engaging with the customer, they are empowered to say, you know, Neville Pty Limited, we've seen that this has been a trend in your last 3 months. We've seen that you started using less data. Is everything okay? Is it an affordability thing? You know, I mean, COVID has put a lot of customers and companies under strain. That way, instead of us responding when the customer wants to leave, we could potentially then offer them a package that actually is affordable to them. Then that way, we start moving away from the reactive nature of trying to save customers, but we use machine learning to empower people to engage more meaningfully with customers. And then in the event that a customer says, okay, actually it is an affordability issue, as an example, the account managers are also empowered with the different, because we know the consumption of this customer, we can then potentially push through to the account manager to say, when you're talking to this customer and maybe they want to do a downward migration in terms of their package, these are the different packages that suit them, right? So then that becomes a more customized engagement, in that we've seen the customer history, we believe they could potentially leave, and that if they say they're struggling financially, the account manager can then almost at the click of a button be able to say, okay, based on your history, these are the products that we believe you could afford. In as much as it could be it would be less consumption because it's going to be a downward migration, but at least we've kept the customer. And also from a customer experience perspective, the customer will feel as though their organization understands them and their needs. And then obviously now, generally, whenever there's a call, there's always a post-call wrap-up, where it means now, if we stick to the same example, customer chooses to do a downward migration, we can then have the RPA bots, right? Cancel contract 1, migrate the customer to contract 2. So when we look at this ecosystem that we've built, we've put the human in the center of everything that we are doing to empower our staff members to have the most meaningful engagement with the customer, right? And also from a customer experience perspective, we're able to make the customer feel as though they are seen and heard, and not that they are just another number, right? So as you can then imagine, this was not an easy implementation, but conceptually, a lot of these kind of solutions can be rolled out in a lot of different industries, as long as you've got the data that's available. So I think what becomes important is the digital nature of an organization. How much information do we have about our customers? How are we able to identify ways to proactively service them? And servicing could be also proactively selling new products to them, because if we realize that they're starting to consume more, maybe we're able to negotiate better contracts and upgrade their product offering. So the application of machine learning and AI with the human in mind is something that we've now consciously started exploring, because we've seen from last year, 2020's experience, that there's a lot of work that can be done to empower the employee. So I think we've moving away from the notion that AI is here to take jobs. We are literally here to use AI to empower our employees in whatever role that they're in. And I think that's what now I've been tasked to try and see, right? What other employees could we actually use machine learning in? And I've also started working with the logistics team. So there's and finance also. Customer service is generally like a default opportunity. But I think even from a network management perspective, even from a finance perspective, so our team is all over right now, which is always a good and a bad thing, in that the more we engage with the different teams, the more they actually see the art of the possible. And we've moved away from the notion where people are fearful of AI, because the moment you land a use case that works, right, it almost plants that seed, or is a gateway drug, as I call it, into making AI ubiquitous in the organization, that people just need to feel the need that they actually need AI to make them more powerful, and not for them to actually be fearful of it. So I don't know, Kobus, if you've got any questions or comments.
If I could
Yeah,
just...
I agree with you. I think the part of the, let's call it the challenges we have in the market today, is we are in that sort of education mode or education phase of what AI and machine learning can do for you. And, you know, Gartner always have their, you know, their sort of where does technology fit and in terms of their hype cycle. And we're in that phase now where, you know, the last couple of years, everybody was talking AI, but nobody was doing AI. Now we're in that cycle where everybody's starting to do AI, and some work and some don't work, and you'll only hear the stories of AI that doesn't work. So now we're going through that valley of death almost, and it does take a lot of research and development. It does take a lot of education. It does take a lot of collaboration with the market to get some of these models to work. And I think we need to realize that in that people are still scared of AI. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it can do. They don't know how to procure it, for instance. You know, if you look at just the positions that get deployed in organizations like yours at Vodacom, it's all new positions. Now you have head data scientist, head of AI, head of enterprise AI, head of CX AI. So you get all these new titles and positions coming into the market. So it's definitely it's definitely stimulating, but people are not buying AI at the moment at a rapid rate. They want to know that it's working. They want to know what the ROI is going to be. And I think the future of AI, if I bring it a bit back into the CX environment, the BPO and CX environment, is definitely going to be to generate that gateway drug that you're talking about is going to take a lot of very close collaboration with organizations to get to one, two, or three of these case studies or models to work. And I think that's still going to be a challenge for us. Enterprise AI is not our space. You know, it's sort of enterprise AI at the moment is a bit like the art of the possible. Where in the enterprise can we use or leverage AI to make the business better?
Yeah.
I'm going to bring today us just back onto the CX fairway to see what is happening in that space and what do we hear from the market, where AI and machine learning can make a difference, where it can be applied, and very much in the same theme that you were talking about is at the moment it's all about human assisted AI and machine learning. How can we make humans more effective and more efficient and assist them to be better, to do their job better? And I think that is a big focus.
And I think you made a comment, Kobus, about not enough people buying into this. I think one thing I would never take for granted is how I have a lot of support all the way to our group CEO in these initiatives. And one of the things that I've had to make sure that there's alignment from a stakeholder management perspective is when we're talking about the art of the possible, I do not have a glass ball that will look into the future to actually see what the endpoint is going to look like. But in order for you to win in something, you literally need to be in the game, right? And I think for our team, because we are predominantly permanent Vodacom employees, we've got all of these assets, which were a long time in the coming, because a lot of the customer value management solution, which is Vodacom Just for You, was one of those first machine learning data scientist functions in Vodacom. So for us, this has been an evolution of different departments. And that's why we're now able to almost play around with them, because they are part of our organization. And because we also don't know what the endpoint is going to look like, but we do know we're going to be in a different position where we are right now. And I see Barry asked the question about the team of data scientists. So we've got a hybrid model, right? That a lot of them are based in South Africa. They are South Africans. They are employed in South Africa, right? There's a lot of, it's like a hybrid solution in that we've got people. My manager is like an oracle, really, when it comes to the data scientist discipline. He's been a data scientist for years, but he's been able to upskill and mentor and grow a lot of people in the industry. And then we also use because we're part of Vodafone, we also get to leverage so depending on the deliverable timelines and pressures, we've got the Vodafone shared services team that we're able to leverage off. But when I look at the solutions that I've built in my team, it's only been South African resources that have been used. And I think I like the model that we have in Vodacom, in that we were almost allowed, inverted commas, to grow our own crop, because we are one of those departments that are quite instrumental in the future of Vodacom. So it feels counterintuitive for us to rely on consultants. So I was almost allowed, inverted commas, to first crawl before I could run and walk. I don't think I'm flying, but I do know that I'm a bit ahead of the curve in the industry and in South Africa, really. But it's been a lot of learnings, right? And managing of expectations. And I think because I remember I was talking to our MD, and he says he wants for my team to be protected, inverted commas, in that we need to be allowed to be as innovative as possible. And with innovation comes failure. And so by having him say those words, almost then allowed me to not be afraid of failing, because it is a space of experimenting and learning fast. Literally, that's one of Vodacom's values. And that is how our team works and lives on a daily basis. And knowing that we can't know it all, and some of these skill sets don't exist in South Africa. So some of these things are going to be impossible to do right now, but it becomes a work in progress. And continuous improvement is also quite important. That I know people will want the ultimate end goal from the first drop, everything works. That is not going to happen. And anybody who's going to promise you that we're going to switch this on and it's going to be working within 2 weeks, I feel like I also was disappointed in myself for thinking that. Like, I think we've now learned, and I've accepted that every time we implement something, there will be room for improvement. But when you look back, we're better off than where we were 6 months ago. And that's a kind of attitude that I try and remind our stakeholders and also our team members to not try to be too hard on themselves, because we literally, inverted commas, at the beginning of an industrial revolution. And it is a revolution, it's not a switch, it's a transformation. So there will be room for growth and errors. I think the trick is to be in the game, and try it and do it, and not necessarily be fearful. Because I think a lot of companies, because of their fear of being associated with job loss, they then just choose to not engage. Whereas we are now focusing on the best customer service that we can provide for our customers, right? That becomes our driving ethos. So we will do whatever we can to service our customers best. We will bring people along in the journey. So our agenda is not to reduce headcount. We're not in the business of reducing headcount. We are in the business of offering good customer service in the technology space. So we can't afford to be fearful of technology, because technology is an enabler. And I always use, because I've got the banking background, I always use the ATM anecdote, where if we look at, when I'm not that old, but historically, when the ATM started, customers were at work, right, when the branches were open. So they then complained that they don't have enough, lunchtime is not a good enough window for them to do their banking. And they want to be able to withdraw money in a safe and convenient manner. So the bank started them with ATMs that would just be outside of the branch. Then that way, customers could self-service, right? And then there was a revenue stream for the bank in terms of bank charges. At the time, tellers were never afraid for their jobs, because they knew that this was a supplementary service, that they are not going anywhere. But if you now fast track to 2021, in an ATM, and I was in the bank when all of these things were happening, you were able to then start doing account opening. You're able to do transfers. You're able to get statements. Now you're getting statements that are bank verified and that they've got stamps. there's nothing that that particular ATM cannot do that the person in the branch can't do. And one of the things I think we tend to forget is that through the creation or invention of the ATM, I remember there was a time when I used to work at teller. My first job was a teller. There were customers that still used books, right, where they refused to have a bank card. They would walk into the branch, withdraw money, and as a teller, you needed to update their book, right? And this was in 2015, no, 2005, sorry. This was in 2005, where customers refused to even have a card. So literally the bank had products that were non-card based. Up until they started phasing those away, then the creation of the bank card allowed for customers to also then use point of sale machines more comfortably because they trusted the technology that when you put in your card and your PIN, nobody's going to steal your money. And now we're opening accounts. And only now our branches then saying, we actually don't need as many people in the branch. But if you look at the history of the ATM, and then there's the technology, the supporting industries that grew because of the growth of the ATM functionality. And if you look at it, at the center of it, banks were always trying to service customers the best way possible. They were never with the agenda, we are going to reduce branch network. It just so happened to be the ripple effect of it, but that was never the agenda. And I always laugh at people that are in the branches that are now shocked that, oh no, the ATM is taking my job. It's like, it's more than 20 years in the making, right? So nobody as a person should have then sat and thought my job is safe, because there was this evolution that was happening in front of us. So I also see AI having that same function, in that there's going to be spillovers of other industries that will support AI. And it's about people understanding. So we're still at the beginning, right, of this evolution. So there's still a lot of opportunities to unlock, and a lot of opportunities and more organizations like Quibus's that should be there to support organizations in this AI journey. And organization can then make the most of that and be in on it at the early stages of it, whether through understanding the technologies and implementing it as a support function, the cleaning of data. It was mind-boggling how data sanitization and data cleaning is such a labor-intensive function. As like, it feels so counterintuitive. The majority of data scientists spend more time cleaning data than actually building models. And that's something that a lot of people don't know. And then I remember asking my manager, I said, why don't you hire someone to clean your data? And it's like, yeah, at the HR doesn't work that way. But conceptually, there's nothing stopping us from saying in the future that that could be a function to fast track that the data scientists are highly skilled individuals. They must focus on building models. Then we have people that do the whole data cleaning up and sanitization. So those are the opportunities that I think we should call out as people that are seeing these opportunities, so that we start seeing where there's more opportunities for people to upskill themselves and grow into those still labor requirements from an AI support perspective.
Oh, thank you, Ati. That was quite an overview. I've made so many notes, I've run out of space on my paper, but yeah, thank you for that. And we're going to get into some of the, I think Ati's got 2 case studies and use cases that we'll go into briefly. But at this time, I do have some questions for you, Ati, but just to move on, Quibus, I wonder if I could hand over to you, and then you're just going to have to tell me to move on the slides, and then you're going to take us through AI from a customer experience perspective.
Yeah, actually, there's a statement on this slide is that, you know, AI, people very often ask me, so what is AI and what is ML and where can it be applied? And, you know, it obviously today gets applied in a lot of cases. You know, apart from, let's leave the enterprise AI and the art of the possible. And there's companies that engage with enterprises on that basis to say, where can we help you in your business? Then you have AI for industrial robotics, for instance, where AI gets applied. It's been applied for many, many years in robotics to build your cars and mechanical robotics and so on. So that's been applied for many years. Then, AI in your mobile phone, there's so much AI built in your mobile phone, it's scary. And then in applications, AI, there's a lot of AI or machine learning that drives certain applications like, Tinder, for instance. I don't know how it works, but they tell me there's AI in there. Siri on your phone. So the application of AI is vast. Then there's this cognitive AI, and this cognitive AI is really where people are trying to reproduce the human brain and to try and speak like a human and think like a human and act like a human. And that is high-end cognitive AI. The area that's more applicable to our environment in BPO and CX and customer service, so on, is NLU and NLP, natural language understanding and natural language processing. That now gets deployed in many cases in analytics platforms, speech analytics platforms, and prediction platforms. Then in process automation, so some of your RPA products, they're out there, Blue Prism, UiPath, Everything Everywhere, Clever. Those sort of platforms use AI to help make their apps smarter and more effective. And then what we're going to talk a little bit about today as well is on the data side, on the customer data side, is how do you apply AI and machine learning, as Ati said, to be able to, for one of our clients, we between 12:30 in the morning and 4 o'clock, we analyze about 15 million customers and what was the variances, in behaviors of the previous 24 hours. So no human or humans can do that. And that's where on the data application side. So I just want to bring it a little bit back to the BPO and the CX environment with my next 2-3 slides. So just move the slide, please, Neville. So this is really, I think, as Ati said, that the revolution has started, even if it's a bit slow. And I think BPO companies, and when I talk BPO companies, I almost put myself in that same category because I've been in that world for so long before I started Genie, is that we need to understand that enterprises are shifting. So enterprises are adopting, enterprises are employing people internally with the titles to look at these things. And if we want them to outsource their business processes to us, we need to almost be in front of that client in terms of anticipation, thinking, innovation, to be able to I guess, create the value and the trust that they can outsource their business processes to us. This is really just, I think this slide, was it a Gartner slide or one of the research companies that basically, what are the factors that's going to really reshape the CX industry over the next 5 years? And you can basically see that your data management is a big thing. Today, everything is moving towards hyper-personalization. So in the past, where your customer was just a telephone number, it doesn't cut anymore. You need to know your customer intimately. So how are you going to know your customer intimately? That's about analyzing your customers. Then things like service personalization, you can see there on 42, proactive CX automation, natural language processing. So the shift from reactive to proactive is huge at the moment in terms of what are the focus areas? How can I start engaging with my customer in such a way that they feel, we throw this term around, but they feel important, they feel loved. It's personalized. In other words, I just don't hit them with anything that that you've got. You know, in the past where you just blast telesales or blast SMSs or blast emails to people are fast becoming a way of the past. It needs to be very, very personalized. So this is sort of, I think what's going to shape our industry is how can we assist that the industry and enterprises to move service and customer engagement as a whole from a seriously reactive state to a proactive state. So really for me, and this is now a little bit bringing it back into what Jeannie is focusing on. And I know there's a lot more that can be done, but at the end of the day, I think you have to focus on niche, especially in the AI space, because as I mentioned previously, it can be applied anywhere. Now, if you go to the market and say, you know, we in AI, how can we help you today? We find you'll be in trouble because the market don't really know. So it's that art of the possible, and then they will select one or two things, and then they do customized AI modeling and development. We're not in that space. We're only in a space where we help enterprises on the customer side of things. So how can we improve your customer experience? How can we reduce customer churn and retain them better? How can we improve, that increase sales? I want to change that to improve sales. When I say improve sales, is obviously from whoever is doing sales for the organization can do more sales, but it's also sales where the customer has a smile on his face when he buys it. So improving sales, that whole customer experience is also around not to pressure sell to such an extent where you burn your brand, for instance. Collections is another big one. We didn't think originally, but interesting, over the last 12 months, the collections environment has become a big focus area for us to start predicting defaults, analyzing your customer base a lot better, and do more personalized offers to those customers to pay their arrear monies and sales. Obviously, the little movie of an AI runtime engine that I'm going to show at the end of the webinar is focusing on that, is sales and collection. So this is really where we're focusing on, and this is all areas where you can, as a platform, as an AI machine learning platform, can start driving change. I was just thinking now, a very important factor when people say, when AI or machine learning makes the agents more effective and efficient, then surely they're going to reduce jobs. You know, we're going to lose jobs. Well, in two environments where we did make the agents more effective, and there was a reduction in, there was an improvement in efficiencies. I'll give you an example why it won't impact jobs on the short term. In any average customer service environment, what is your service level? What's the first thing they say to you when you say your service level? They say to you, it's 80% of calls or 70% of calls within 30 seconds. No, but why is it not 99% or 98% within 10 seconds? No, it's too expensive. It's going to cost me too much, and I'm going to have to employ too many humans. Now, right there in two environments, we improved the service level significantly with the same cost to serve for the company, but the company's service level has gone through the roof, and their customers are happier. So there's a typical example where you don't have to reduce headcount, you just improve your customer experience. Okay, next slide, please, Neville. Patty, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that comment. When I think about my customer experience, where I call most call centers, and they tell me, your query, you're going to get a ticket, and we're going to help you in the next 24 to 48 hours. I feel like punching someone, right? And now that I'm working in Vodacom and I'm doing all of these automations, I realized that the limitation in the ecosystem was the technology that we had didn't allow for us to help our customers immediately. And then also when you look at the model of contact centers, that we've got some kind of matrix that says the average handling call time must not exceed XYZ. And therefore, if this call is that long, it must then be handed over to some kind of back office. And there's opportunities now for us to actually merge the back office and the front office using technology in such a way that whenever a customer calls us, it's a first time call resolution. And the average handling time is not increased because we've got technology assisting the agent in the call. And we have a near real-time response to any customer query or anything, like the most optimistic utopian state. But why can't we think along those lines? Why should we have a back office that does the service requests? And that way, that could be the differentiator for any business process solution company that we promise to never have a back office, for lack of a better description, that all our customers will be serviced first time around. That to me would be the most ultimate customer experience. And then from the company that's offering that service, can you imagine the type of customers that you will end up attracting? Because they know that you're using technology to enable the best customer service that's available there in whatever industry. So there's those opportunities that we should focus our energies on in terms of the utility of these technologies.
Actually, you're actually right. I mean, non-first call resolution or non-issue resolution is by far the highest contributor to dissatisfaction, to customer dissatisfaction. Answering the phone even upfront quickly and so on is not even that much of a dissatisfaction. But issue resolution, and that's an area where I think RPA, predictability, RPA and automation can drive a big impact. Okay, this slide is really just to explain to the audience where we're focusing on at this point in time. In any organization, for you to get from reactive to proactive, is you have to get to the next level of predictability and prescriptive analytics so that you can engage with customers in an informed way before the customer have to call you. I mean, when we started the company, this is a true story. We actually sat in Cape Town, a couple of us. We had a couple of bottles of wine and we said, okay, before we start a company, let's imagine, what is it that we want to achieve that's going to be fun moving forward? And the big thing was like, can you imagine if you don't have, the best service is if you don't have to ask for service, or the best customer experience is if you don't have to ask for service. And that is where the whole thing started in terms of how can you get to the stage where you can proactively engage with customers where they don't have to phone the call center. You phone you reach out to them and you service them. Obviously, there's always going to be call centers. I must just say this up front. There's always going to be call centers. There's always going to be voice service. There's always going to be voice sales, voice collections, and so on. It is just, there is an opportunity to do it better, faster, and more effective. So what we're going to be focused, we're not going to focus, I've even graded out in terms of where Jeannie focused on the descriptive and diagnostic analytics. We're going to focus on the next level. Neville, just tap again, please, click again. On the predictive engagement and predicting churn, predicting better sales and collections accelerator. That's sort of where we are going to focus today, that I'm just going to create or explain to you how 2 case studies work in that space. But it is really just to, in terms of the churn prediction, it is to start analyzing your customer data, analyzing patterns, analyzing behaviors, and then overlay existing customer behaviors onto that. It get to a propensity to churn score of a customer. And then there's a reach out, or there's a save process that kicks in. Whether that process is with a human, or it's with an SMS, or whether it's an app or RPA, that is up to the organization. Same with sales. How can you do more hyper-personalized sales? Because if you're doing telesales today, for instance, and you're just getting a database from a third party with a telephone number and very different and very limited information about a customer, it is very difficult to sell. But how to upsell, and at this point, I just need to say that we, at the moment, the platform is only focusing on upsell and cross-sell of existing customers. So it's really just to analyze existing customers a lot better. You know, socioeconomic conditions, not LSM scores, but a whole lot of other data that you have about them, and to match products to that a lot more intelligently. And then you find that the closing and the uptake is a lot better. And then collections, the same thing. It's existing collections, and it's more early stage collections. The next slide is almost, I've talked through the next slide, Neville, so you can click right through it. But I think it's just to explain here that I've grayed out the agent absenteeism prediction model because we haven't commercialized that yet. It's not ready for deployment or production. It's work in progress. But the other models are, and especially since we engage with Ecosystem AI as our partner, using their platform, and I'll explain the platform just now, how it works physically, that we got to the stage where we could offer these let's call it functions, where you not just predict the retention, but you also engage with a customer. And depending on that engagement, whether it was a positive or a negative engagement, that data also gets feedback to the machine learning platform to start predicting more accurately in the future. Okay, next slide, Neville. I'm very cognizant of time, so I want to get to the case study.
Yes, okay, thank you for that, Cobus. So we are going to move on to the case studies right now. And if I can just remind everyone, thank you, Barry and Greg, for your questions. We I think some of them have been answered in the discussion, but we will get to answering those in the next couple of minutes. And then we are going to move on to the case studies, and I'm going to hand back to Ati, because Ati is going to take us through a case study. And if I can just find on intelligent automation. So Ati, and also I just want to check, we have about 25 minutes left. So we've got four of these use cases to get through. So Ati, talk to us about this case study.
Sorry, I'm going to try and briefly, I think the imagery also helps give context in that we've got a lot of situations where customers engage with, if they don't use our digital channels, we do give them the option of a non-digital channel, which is our emails that get to be attended by people. So now we've got two types of technologies, which is a natural language processing technology, which is a technology really that's used to understand customer intent based within their natural context of how they communicate. Because if you can think about it, South Africans speak a very different English dialect to the English that's in America, which is also predominantly influenced by our native languages. So there's an opportunity for us to then, instead of waiting for people to read and go through all of the emails, we have the opportunity to read and understand customer intent. When that intent is understood, some customers would have attachments to their emails, where we then use a technology called optical character recognition, which is a technology that almost, I always say, is like the eyes of any technology solution that's able to read images and documents to understand what, and there's certain rules that you factor into this OCR solution, and all of these rules are based on the existing business process, where it's able to extract different types of fields within in whatever document that's attached and linking it to the customer request. What we then do is there's a certain level of confidence that each one of these technologies can have, right? And this is where the learning and time comes in, that if the particular technology is not satisfied with its confidence index, and that's a rule you add in as a business to say, if there's a confidence index of 90% and below, then workflow it to a person to do validation. What that allows us to do is it mitigates the risk associated with the automation, because you don't want to misinterpret a customer request, nor do you want to not read all the fields, you know, that are required to be extracted from the particular document. And within that human in the loop solution, you're able to teach the OCR and NLP to improve on its particular reading. And then if it's reached the particular success level, we can then hand it over to an RPA robot to do the actual processing as a human would have done. So in these kind of situations, we want to move to a point where a lot of the customer queries tend to be autonomous in nature. And these are the most simple, straightforward type of requests. And then we will have the humans then focus more on the complex customer requests. Then that way, this is where we then are starting to see our turnaround times in terms of our service requests that get logged become a whole lot more improved, because the smaller, less complex type of customer requests are more automated and autonomous in nature. And you have a person in the loop for validation purposes. And then the team gets to focus on the more complex solutions, and it becomes a win-win situation that their SLAs get to improve, they get a reduced workload, and they've got depth in how they engage with customers, unlike trying to get through all the different types of query types that come through from our different customers. So that is the one
Okay, now this is very interesting, Atienne. And I'm assuming that this is, once this process has been developed, it can be applied into any area of the business.
Yes, it does. And I think where we do acknowledge that not all our customers want to do self-service functions. And even though we would have a platform for them to do some of these things, they still prefer, they feel like an email is more personal than an app. So we can't ignore that. So we still then want to still give them a digital experience in a non-digital. We classify email now as non-digital, in a non-digital channel.
Okay, great. All right, if there are any questions on this particular one, which I find quite fascinating, I think I could use this. Maybe I could use one of these to catch up on all my unread emails. Kobus, the next use case that we going to go into is autonomous sales and collections. I think you referred to this, so let's get into the detail on this one.
Okay, thanks. So what I was trying to do with this is just to illustrate, I reckon, the process. We're going to show a movie towards the end, which is a simulation of an actual AI runtime engine in process, and you'll be able to see this process. As I mentioned before, we've been in this industry in R&D and AI and machine learning for CX now for the last sort of 5 years, and we have some serious sort of bullet holes in our t-shirts in terms of trying stuff out and working and not working. We started originally with literally developing platforms, our own internal platforms, and then we shifted to Google, and then came across the ecosystem guys who we are now very intimately collaborating with on their platform, and their platform really gave us the acceleration and the stability to build prediction models on top of it, because it was built for customer predictions. And this is really, I just want to show with this illustration how it works on the single platform, and this is where you deploy and install a runtime engine, where your algorithms, your machine learning platform, everything is contained. At the moment, it's running on AWS. It can be a cloud platform and or in your own network. But the first the first thing it does is really around establishing that customer intelligence. So the ability to do big data analysis, do customer categorization, profiling, almost seeing your customers in 4D to try and understand who they are. And that is not just the let's call it the static metadata associated with that, which is, how long have they been with us? When was the start date? Their geographical data, their demographical data, what products are they using? What are their spend patterns? All of that stuff is contained in this. But this is really to look at the historical footprint of your data. It's also behavioral stuff. In other words, what are they consuming? How are they consuming it? When are they buying? What channels do they engage with you? So on the static data, if you look at the second one, we also apply behavioral economics to this, because this is where your data gets into that 4D sort of scenario where you can almost see your customers. You can slice and dice your customer data to look at their behaviors, even down to personalities, how they engage, what they do, what they buy, usage, etc. Once you get that as your base data to work with, then your prediction models becomes a lot easier, actually, and a lot more sort of accurate associated with that. And at this point, the case study is really just around sales and collections. And sales, upfront, I must say, is not broad-based sales. So this is not, this is not trying to sell stuff to customers you don't know. This is using your existing customer data and analyzing them in-house. So what we don't do is we do not work with, I call it sort of above the line customer data, where you can scrape from social media and all those different platforms and then work with them. We certainly don't want to be a Cambridge Analytica. And we don't want to breach regulations like the POPIA Act, etc. So we really just work with customers with their own data, where the customers have opt-in, and they can look at their customer data and they can recommend new products or upselling, cross-sell, or different products as part of their customers. So that is important to understand that. So there, for instance, the predictive modeling is around which customers can buy what products, or which customers are more better aligned to buy what products. And that's coming back to that previous two modules. Once we've now got that list of customers to sell to, we then the recommender engine is really what products and services and what you can recommend to those different categories of customers. Typical example, actually not to take a stab at Vodacom, but in the past, I'm a VIP customer of Vodacom, but in the past I had telesales people phoning me for a plan 300 or a plan 100, contract. So that obviously is not a personalized. They don't know me. They've taken third-party data and they've just smiled and dialed associated with that. So the whole objective of this thing is to, when you do get an offer from your brand, you must go like, wow, okay, they know me, they know I might have a need for that, and I would like that. So it's much more effective. And I think the telesales, even the BPO companies, will agree with me that there's a lot of cost wasted in just a broad-based smile and dial approach, where if it can be more effective, more personal, then they have a better opportunity to close that deal and make more money. The recommender engine obviously gets, as you can see, this is why I said earlier, this gets built very intimately with the brand. So with the company who wants to deploy this. the internal people need to understand what products they want to offer and how it will map to certain categories. Then once we have that list ready, the next bubble that pops up, please, Neville, is the actual engagement with that customer. And now how you engage with a customer is really the company's preference. In two of these cases, in both the sales and in the collections case at the moment, it's really SMSs going out. When a customer wants to engage, they click on the link and the link comes through to an agent or a screen pop to an agent to close that sale, but now it's a warm lead. And the other one is, if there's actually no agents involved, they pop an application and your details are already in the application. You just need to validate it. And then you apply, and when the application process kicks off, it kicks off. That's actually for a credit card, upsells, cross-sells for a credit card at a large bank. Then the internal process kicks off and apply for the credit card. So on the action and engagement, this is normally where the BPO companies get involved as well, as to say, okay, I will fulfill that for you. So if you need a human agent to fulfill the process, to pick compliance, to bring more skill, knowledge, and acumen into the sales process, then it gets directed to humans, and then a RPA process kicks in on the back end of that. And then the last process, but not least, is this is where your machine learning platform becomes more and more intelligent and accurate. So what happens with that customer engagement becomes a very valuable data point to the machine learning platform for what they refer to as reinforcement learning for the machine learning platform. In some of the instances, you start with a very low prediction accuracy, because you don't know how your humans or your customers are going to react to the different offerings associated with that. But what they do on the app or on the SMS app, or whether they click on or buy the product, becomes really valuable information to make the prediction model and the machine learning model more and more intelligent. Now, interesting enough, even the fact that somebody doesn't click on it, and the fact that you send them different options or offers or different products, different messages at different times of the day, even the fact that they don't click also becomes a data point to make the machine learning platform obviously more intelligent in terms of the predictions. So for more accurate sales and more accurate collections, this platform helps organizations to obviously sell more and sell more effectively, and secondly, collect more from the existing customer base. So in those two environments, that is where it's working well at the moment. But bear in mind, I still say what Ati said earlier on as well. Each and every client environment is different. The data is different. The data interfaces is different. Although we have a platform that can do this, it doesn't mean that it will be successful in a certain environment. And that's why I said that initial, when we engage with customers, that initial discovery phase where we look at their data, can it be done, will it work, won't it work, is very important as a process when we engage with organizations or companies to see whether this will be working in their environment. But I can tell you, once this thing is working on a collections case study environment, we have had a 17% lift on connectability with customers that they couldn't get hold of for a year. So they've been smiling and dialing to those customers for a year. The customers did not engage with them. We took that data, we started this process, and we had a 17% collection against, as I would refer to as dark data or dark customers, because you know, nowadays when you phone for debt, the customer know you're phoning for debt, but they're not going to answer that phone. But if you engage with them in a different channel where they're not embarrassed and they're not speaking to a human and they don't have to explain to the human why they haven't paid and all of that, we find that on that SMS, an SMS goes to a chat and that chat gets fulfilled and automated. It had quite a high lift. And then the other thing is for, remember, for compliance and so on, when you do chat with them, then you have the conversation in text. So the text drops into the machine learning platform as well, and will during that process nudge the customers to payday and make sure that when they made a promise to pay, that it pays there. So it just automates and hyper personalizes again the whole collections process a lot more intimately, and it's automated. So it doesn't have to sit in your dialing system and or the agent's heads anymore. The whole process is a lot more sort of proactive, and it even, you know, it pops screens to the agents with a guidance system as to say, this is the offer that was given to this customer. If he pays now, he gets a 20% discount. The agent knows what to do, and they just fulfill the sort of process in the back end. So I know we're sort of out of time, but at a high level, this is where it gets applied in our environment in today's day and age.
Oh, thanks, Cobus. Sure. So while you say that every environment is different in terms of the data and the environment, I think what does remain the same is this process and this approach.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, please, guys, if there are any questions, just pop them into the Q&A. We're moving on to the next case study. Ati is just going to take us through intelligent automation. So Ati, over to you.
Okay, so thanks for that, Neville. So I think in the space of collections, we realized in a perfect world, we would know which customers would have a high propensity to default, right? So we've built an engine that has gone through the last 18 months worth of data to look at the different traits of the type of customers that have defaulted, right? And then also we've also looked at which kind of customers also have a high propensity to pay when they do default. And so somewhere in there, there's a middle ground that where we could say, now that we've got and analyzed all of this data, we could potentially then indicate which customers have a high propensity to defaults. And by us doing that, we could then, from a next best action perspective, try and see what type of actions can we take to proactively try and prevent customers from defaulting, right? So, and obviously we can't be too dilutive in our actions, but we want to see if we can't put different campaigns where we send an alert to the team that does saves, right? And instead of now being able to operate at a post or reactive manner, imagine if we could potentially offer customer payment holidays, or maybe if we could increase their contract term, right? So from a income perspective, we do get the money eventually, but instead of a customer having a 24-month window, we want to extend it to being 36 months. Eventually, we will collect all of our money, but when it comes to their repayments, we would have been able to reduce the amount that they actually pay us, with the ultimate intention that we would then start seeing customers reducing their rate of default, and therefore having a positive impact on our bad debt levels. And then we also then said, in the event that we couldn't proactively identify that a customer is going to default, say customer does default, when they go and speak to the collections agent, we've actually seen that, and this is one of the very random conversations I was having with one of my peers, and they were talking about how collection agents are rated based on their ability, the customer's ability to honor the payment, right? So it means that the more the agent is in the call center and has experience in negotiating, they generally have a higher success rate. But with all of these young people that keep on coming and going into the organization, we are unable to actually retain enough agents that stay for longer than 18 to 24 months. So then I remember having this conversation where I was like, why don't you then replicate the mind of the strongest collection agent? Now that sounds a bit like ludicrous, but if we look at the patterns of all of the arrangements that have been made, there's certain traits about different customers that have a higher success rate in terms of paying. And then if we could then build a machine learning engine that says, and that gets pushed into the front end, when an agent is collecting on a past due account, let us then make those recommendations based on that particular customer traits, so that we are helping the agent not have to think too much when it comes to the offers that we can offer them. We give them maybe the top 5 or top 4 type of offers when they are negotiating, that they get to be empowered in the conversation. Then that way, we take an agent that's been there for 2 months, give them the power of the machine learning, and almost equate them to an agent that's been there for 2 years. So that means that from a confidence perspective, the agents actually also get that commission of having customers being able to honor their payments. And hopefully the agents don't leave within the same cycle, because now they're performing better as employees through the use of the reactive model that is helping them in that call. And so this is a fairly new space, but I think conceptually, everybody can appreciate that this would be a good place to operate in, because we are helping the agents in the call try and give the customer the best kind of payment arrangement, or even help them financially before they even default. And then hopefully through that experience, the customers will then negotiate contracts and stay with us longer. So it becomes a win-win situation for everybody that's involved.
Great, thank you for that. And then I think we're out of time, and I do apologize that we've gone over time, but I do also feel that the amount of content and data and information that we've shared has been extremely valuable. I'm just going to do a quick run through, and then we'll, if there's any other final comments, then I think what I picked up from this session is that we need to think about meaningful engagements with the human at the center. Ati also mentioned that we need to protect innovation in the face of failure, because there is going to be failure, and we need to protect these environments. We need to create environments that we are able to innovate, we are able to play with the technology, and we need to accept that we are going to fail, we are going to make mistakes, but we're going to learn in the process. I also think Cobus went on to say that there needs to be focus. There needs to be extreme focus on tangible benefits. How is the business going to benefit from this? And taking that approach to when we look at AI. The next thing that we spoke about was the fact that change is painful. Some people find it difficult to change. And some people, I think we all find it difficult to change. It's just that we get to a level where it becomes very difficult. And for some people, that threshold is extremely low, and we need to accept that, and we need to work through those and help our people, so to speak, to get through these changes and to understand that AI is here to stay. We need to work with it, and we need AI to support us and to make us look better. And therefore, the ability to fail fast and to trial and test and go through this process is extremely important. And then finally, the one point that I picked up that I thought was extremely important, Ati mentioned the support that she's getting. And so I think it's critical that there needs to be a top-down approach to digital transformation and to the introduction of AI. We need CEO and executive support to filter down and to create the environments where AI will become tangible, where it will become extremely valuable to the business, and where the benefits will be actually real, and where the people will thrive and will become better at what we do. So that's what I took out of this session, and there's a lot more. But thank you for your time. Any final thoughts? And we are out of time. So Kobus, Ati, any final comments from yourselves before we close out?
No, I think on my side, I think having started this journey, the art of the possible is limitless. And which is for me the driving factor, that I could be at any session, at any meeting, and I see an opportunity to explore. So I think everybody on the call should come with that kind of mindset when it comes to this digital transformation journey. And I don't think the journey is optional. It's compulsory for everyone. So whether you dip your toe, jump whole body in, you need to start somewhere.
Exactly. Just do it, eh?
Yeah.
All right. Kobus?
Yeah, no, I think so. Somebody did ask on the Q&A, how do you build the function internally, or do you get consultants and stuff involved? At the moment, it just looks like if you collaborate an internal team with a specialized engineering team, that it could help a lot. I think you could learn from the business side, from the business, and the AI side from the specialized AI team. So that collaboration, and that is where Jeannie would be open to obviously collaborate with these organizations to try and get you there.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Kobus, and thank you, Ati. Once again, thank you for your participation in this panel. I think it's been really great, and hopefully everybody has benefited from this in some way. And so with that, thank you to everyone that has joined. Please feel free to reach out to us afterwards, to the BPESA. My address is neville@bpesa.org.za. If you have any connection or require any connection with Ati or Kobus, you can just refer that to me, or if you've got their contact details, contact them directly. But thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.